there, algebra student, and thank you for clicking on this video. Enough small talk, let's get rolling with it. Still in Unit 4. Obviously, we're still in Unit 4. We just started Unit 4. We are on Lesson 2, so you should start a new page in your notebook. Get ready to write down some notes. I doubt you'll need a calculator today. You might not. Never a bad idea to have a calculator handy. We are still working with linear equations today. Specifically, what I'm going to teach you to do today is to write a linear equation in something that's called slope-intercept form. Probably you've seen this before. That's my guess. You've seen slope-intercept form before. Let me show you what I mean. Oh, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. I cannot zoom in anymore. Let me see if I can get a little closer with my camera. Does that help at all? Let's see. It's not a perfect system. Recording from home. It's not the most fun I've ever had. Okay, I think that's all right. Hopefully you can see clearly. I know it's small print, but if you listen to what I say, it should work out just fine. All right, slope-intercept form is, in my opinion, the best way to write a linear equation. Now, a linear equation, look, linear. See the word line? That means we're talking about equations that are going to be represented as lines on the coordinate plane. We've already worked with linear, lines on the coordinate plane when we were calculating the slope. But now we're going to look at the equations for those lines. And there are multiple ways to write linear equations. And the most popular way, the most useful way, is something called slope-intercept form. Now, here's the format. Y equals mx plus b. Y equals mx plus b. I'm sure you've heard that before. It has a name. It's called slope-intercept form. It is, again, in my opinion, the most useful form of a linear equation. So the equation for a line, for a straight line. Now, I always take issue with the fact that they only show a plus here, because in my opinion, it should show that it could be a plus or a minus. So it really should say y equals mx plus or minus b. Let me write that up here. This is how I would rather see it written, because sometimes it will be a plus b and sometimes it will be a minus b, and that plus or minus does make a difference for that b. So something to keep in mind as we're looking at these equations today. Now, there's another thing called standard form. We're going to get to that here in a few minutes. And then, believe it or not, there's even yet another form beyond that called point slope form. So again, 3 ways to write linear equations. Slope-intercept form, which is my favorite. Standard form, it's all right. And then the other form is called point slope form, and we may or may not get to that. Well, we don't get to it in this lesson, but it's probably coming at you later. Okay, let's go back to y equals mx plus b. Well, the y would, of course, be the y value of an ordered pair. The x would be the x value of an ordered pair for a point on the line. But m and b stand for other values that would represent certain things about this line. And m, we talked about this in the previous lesson, stands for the slope of the line. So whatever number you see here attached to the x represents the slope of the line. In my opinion, slope should always be written as a fraction. So if you look at slope-intercept form equation and the number that's stuck onto the x is not a fraction, if it's a whole number, you need to turn it into a fraction by putting a 1 in the denominator. So you'll see what I mean here right away when we start with our examples. Now, what about b? What does b represent? This plus or minus number. That represents the y-intercept. The y-intercept tells you the point at which this line crosses through the y-axis. And when you cross through something, that's called an intersection. So the y-intercept is represented by the letter B, and ultimately it's the number that's sitting out here at the end of our equation. And if it's a plus B, then it's a positive on the y-axis. And if it's a minus B, then it's a negative on the y-axis. Again, there's so much information hidden right here within this slope-intercept form. I could spend probably the better part of 5 days teaching you all about the intricacies of this format and this equation. You're going to learn it little by little. We're not going to do it all at once. Excuse me. So let's practice with slope-intercept form. The directions say, given the following information, write the linear equation in slope-intercept form. So they give us the slope, which is 2. So that's going to be our m. And they give us a y-intercept value of -1. That's our b. The y stays a y, the x stays x. The only values we are plugging in for are the m and the b. Excuse me. So the slope-intercept form, if the slope is 2 and the intercept is -1, would be like this. Y equals m, which is 2, x, plus or minus b. Well, b is -1, so it's -1. Now, earlier I said I like slope to be represented as a fraction. So truly, 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 I do believe the best way to write this is really like that. That being said, if you just write it as a 2, it's not wrong. But for graphing purposes, which we're not doing today, but we will in the future, for graphing purposes, you are going to want slope to be represented as a fraction. So if you want to start representing it as a fraction now, I think that's fine. If you would like to leave it as a whole number, you certainly can. Okay, let's do the next one. It tells us for number 2 that the slope is, I know it's difficult to see, that says -3/5. M is -3/5, and the y-intercept is +4. So our b is +4. Here we go. Y equals m -3/5 x, there is a negative there. It looks like it kind of ran into my fraction bar, but there is a negative. -3/5 x, now plus or minus b. Well, b is 4, so it's +4 because it's a +4. So the m was -3/5 and the b was 4. All right, so again, you're just plugging those two numbers in, leaving the y as y, leaving the x as x. Let's do the next one. Slope, which is m, is -3, which I'm going to write as a fraction. And the y-intercept, which is b, is +2. Cool. Y equals -3/1, because I like it like that, x, and it's plus because it's +2. Not too hard, right? I got news. This is about as easy as it gets for slope-intercept. Let's do the next one. Number 4. Slope is -1. So m is -1/1. There's always a question about where does the negative go, and it doesn't really matter. If it's -1 and you're trying to represent it as a fraction, you could give the negative to the numerator, you could give the negative to the denominator, or you could just write the negative out to the left. As long as you're only showing one negative sign somewhere, it doesn't matter really where you put it. Okay? And the y-intercept, which is b, is +7. Y equals -1/1x plus 7. Y equals mx plus b. Not too bad, right? Let's do the last 2. These don't take too long. Slope is 1/4. Y-intercept is 0. Y equals m x plus or minus 0. Now, guess what? Do we usually show adding 0 or subtracting 0 in math class? No, we usually do not. So I'm going to show you an alternate way to write this. Where you just don't show anything here, realizing that it is there because it's 0. So, and you're going to see this in the future. You're going to see linear equations that don't seem to have a y-intercept. And you have to remember, if you don't see it, it's a 0. Okay? All right. Let's do number 6. It says, and again, I know that's really hard for you to see, but it says negative 5 over 2. Negative 5 over 2 is our m, and our y-intercept, it says, is negative 3. So y equals negative 5 over 2x, and then because it's a negative 3, it's minus 3. So all of these now are written in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. Okay? Those are 6 really good examples. Now we move on to this other way that you can write a linear equation. It's called standard form. Standard form is not super helpful unless you're doing this one particular thing, which we will do soon, and probably in the next lesson, I think. But for now, let me show you what standard form looks like. Let me make sure I can see, you can see what I see. Hold on. I have to tinker with my computer for just a second. Sorry. Where are we at? No, you couldn't see. Okay. Here we go. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. So this is called standard form. It's still a linear equation. There's still our x and our y. And what you can do is manipulate this equation to become slope-intercept form. And that's what we're going to do. Now, real quick, let's look back at slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. What variable did we isolate here? What variable is all by himself? It's the y. See how the y is all alone over here? And there's nothing else bothering him on his side of the equal sign? You're going to have to do that with any equation that starts in standard form. They're going to want you today to take these equations that are in this form and rearrange them to be in this form. So you're going to have to do some shifting. It's not that bad. Now, standard form can be useful in this form if we were trying to find the x-intercept and y-intercept. And you're probably saying, I have no idea, Ms. Glessner, what you're talking about. That's because I haven't taught it to you yet. Like I said, not my favorite form. This can be useful for something that I'm not going to teach you how to do today. I'll teach you how to do it either in the next lesson or possibly 2 lessons from now. But for today, you need to be aware that when you see a linear equation with the x term and the y term on the same side of the equal sign, this is standard form, and it can be manipulated into this form, and that's what we're going to practice doing. So I'm going to teach you how to rewrite standard form into slope-intercept form. The directions say, given equations in standard form, you must convert them to slope-intercept form. So we're going to be rearranging into y equals mx plus b. That's the goal, at least for today. And remember, it's really plus or minus b. So let me show you how this works. It's not that bad. You're just always working to isolate y. You want y to be alone. So if we look at the first one, it says 2x plus y equals 3. Okay, we want y to be alone, and he's not. Who's bugging him? The 2x. We have to get this 2x moved over to the other side of the equal sign. And once we get it over there, we need it to be in the right spot. So here's what I mean. Look at y equals mx plus b. See how right after the equal sign, we have our slope with our x. Then we have our constant out here, which is our y-intercept. Okay? So if we isolate for y, we need to move this 2x over here, and it needs to jump in the spot right after the equal sign. So how do you move a 2x? You subtract 2x from both sides. So these cancel, and I rewrite my equation. I still have the y on the left. Now is my equal sign. Come on. It's not focusing very well. There we go. Now, I see I've got my 3 and I've got my minus 2x. And in good slope-intercept form, the minus 2x comes first. And then the 3, which is a plus 3 because it's a positive 3. So look, y equals mx plus b. So it's weird because the 3 was in the C position to start with. But when we rearrange it, the 3 becomes the B. So check it out. It was the C value when it was here. But when we rearrange it into this form, the 3 becomes the B. Confusing? I suppose if you let it be confusing, it's confusing. Let's do another. Ooh, this one's really good. All right, here we go. We've got, here, I'll draw the line. Maybe the line would help a little bit. We want y to be alone, and y is not alone. He is currently being multiplied by a 5, and there's this plus 4x. So let's get rid of that 4x first. We're going to subtract 4x. So it moves. So I have 5y equals negative 4x minus 30. Now, y is still not alone. Nope. He does not want to be multiplied by 5. So every single term gets divided by 5. He gets divided by 5, he gets divided by 5, and he gets divided by 5 all the way across. Those cancel. Now, y equals negative 4/5 x, right? It looks like a fraction. It stays a fraction. And we had negative 30 divided by 5, negative 6. Y equals mx minus b. You rearranged it. All you're doing is solving for y, solving for y, solving for y. Let me do the next few on the dry erase board so that it's a little bit bigger. Hang on just a second here. Let me grab. I'm sorry, that was probably loud. Let me grab some markers, and now we can use my dry erase board. Here's the next one. X minus 3y equals 12, right? Solving for y. So we got to get rid of that x. Right now it's a plus 1x, so we're going to minus 1x. Computer. Now, I have negative 3y equals, who comes first? The x term comes first, and that's a plus 12. Now, we go back to the y because that's who we're trying to solve for. And he does not want to be multiplied by negative 3. So everybody gets divided by negative 3. Every piece gets divided by negative 3. And when we do that, these 3's cancel. Y equals, A -1 divided by a -3 is positive 1/3, right? Negative divided by negative makes positive. And it stays a fraction. In fact, we like it that way. We like it as a fraction because that's our slope. So 1/3 x, now we have to do this division. We have 12 divided by -3 is -4. This is our y-intercept. Y equals mx plus or minus b. It's in the right form. We rearranged it. This is our answer right here. This is why you have to know how to rearrange equations. This is why you have to know how to solve for a certain variable. Let's do another one. How about this one? X, which is 1x, minus y, which is 1y, equals -8. All right? Let's get that x term to move. So we're going to subtract 1x, subtract 1x. We have -1y equals -1x minus 8, right? You always put the x term right next to the equal sign. Now, y cannot have a -1. That's not allowed. So everybody gets divided by -1 all the way across. So those cancel. Y is alone and happy. A -1 divided by -1. Negative divided by negative is positive. So 1/1x. And a -8 divided by a -1 is a +8. Y equals mx plus b. Our slope is 1/1, and our y-intercept is +8. So we are rearranging standard form into slope-intercept form. Two more. 4x minus y, which is really a 1y, equals 0. Let me zoom out a little bit. Maybe that'll help. I know the autofocus gets a little touchy. All right, let's move the x term over. So we're going to subtract 4x. Those cancel. I bring down my minus 1y equals, our x term goes first. Go back. The y cannot have that -1, so we divide everybody by a -1. Those cancel. Y is alone and happy now. -4 divided by -1. Negative divide by negative is positive. So that's 4x, which is really 4/1. That's your slope. Plus a 0 divided by 1. Well, you guys, 0 divided by anything is 0. So now I know my slope is 4, which is 4/1, and my y-intercept is 0. Another way to write this, again, you do not have to show that 0. You could have either of these answers and it would be correct. When the intercept is 0, you really don't have to see it or write it. But you do have to know it's 0. You have to know it's there. Okay, one more where we convert standard form into point or slope-intercept form. Last one. 3x minus 2y equals 14. Rearrange, 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 rearrange. We're going to move that 3x by subtracting. I still have a -2y. X term comes first because that's the right format. So we're getting there. Y is being multiplied by -2. No. Divide by -2 on every single term. Those cancel. Y equals a negative divided by a negative is positive. So it's 3 over 2x. And a positive 14 divided by a negative 2 is a minus 7, or a negative 7. Y equals m, your slope, x, plus or minus, so in this case it's minus 7, so this is your y-intercept. There you go. You have rearranged standard form into slope-intercept form. All right, now moving forward, we're going to learn how to graph from these forms. There's so much to this. I hope you're keeping up. I hope you're taking notes. We can certainly talk about this in the Google Meet, and you better believe we're going to. All right, thanks for checking in. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our meet.